Hello students, a very good morning to all of you. I hope that you have gone through my first session on amoebiasis, the disease in toto. So now we'll go into the details of the chemotherapy of amoebiasis. So please listen carefully that I'm going to give two challenges in the form of case studies at the end. And of course, two multiple choice questions which you can easily answer. But case studies, you need to use your brain a little bit. Okay, so please pay attention. So we'll start our session now regarding the chemotherapy of amoebiasis. Let us see. So we'll start from the classification of anti-amoebic drugs. So this is there are two types of classification that we have, and you have in your textbooks also those two types of classification. So there is one chemical classification that we are not going to use this chemical classification in our treatment proper. So you can just go through that like nitroimidazole derivatives, dichlorohistamides, emetins, halogenated 8-hydroxyquinones, and 4-aminoquinoline derivatives, chloroquine, and then antibiotics. So here you may get a question like role of antibiotics in treating amoebiasis disease or the anti-amoebal antibiotics. This is 2 marks question that is very important for you. Then nitazoxanide, which belongs to the group nitrothiazolidines. Okay. Then another classification based on the site of action that we do have is, so it is broadly classified into luminal amoebicides and tissue amoebicides. Luminal amoebicides again are subdivided into three categories of drugs. That is, number one is amides, that is diloxanide furoate and nitazoxanide. Then antibiotics, tetracycline and paromomycin. Then 8-hydroxyquinolines, idochlorhydroxyquine or idoquinol we do have. These drugs act on the parasitic organisms which stay within the lumen of the intestinal tract. Whereas these tissue amoebicides, they do act on the parasitic organisms which invade the tissues. So we have discussed in our earlier session. So what is the presentation of luminal amoebiasis and tissue amoebiasis, which can again get subdivided into invasive intestinal and extraintestinal. Luminal amoebiasis means asymptomatic cases. So now I think you are clear with the picture by going through the first session. Now we'll deal with each and every drug proper in detail. So here we have tissue amoebicides means for intestinal and extraintestinal amoebiasis. We do have nitroimidazole derivatives like metronidazole, which is most commonly used for the management of amoebiasis. Then tinidazole, setnidazole, ornidazole, and cetronidazole. Then alkaloids, that is emetin and dihydroemetin. Then for extraintestinal amoebiasis, chloroquine is the only available option that we do have. So now we'll go to each and every drug one by one. Okay. This is anti-amoebic drugs. So we have discussed this slide already. So aminoacids liberating trophozoites and eroding the wall of the intestine, then hematogenous spread, liver and other organs, multiple organs getting involved. This is getting excreted as such. So here we do have the option of luminal amoebicides. Here we have systemic amoebicides because of systemic invasion, and mixed amoebicides which act on both the things. Okay. Then coming to the drugs proper, metronidazole. So metronidazole is a very, very, very important stop question in your theory final exam. So metronidazole is a nitroimidazole derivative, which is a drug of choice in both intestinal and extraintestinal amoebiasis, but we don't use this molecule in asymptomatic cispases. Why? We'll see that. It is a potent amoebicide. That's why we use this molecule in both intra and intestinal and extraintestinal amoebiasis. Less toxic, cost effective. It's a very good molecule. And it inhibits CMI, cellular mediated immunity, induces mutagenesis and radiosensitizing effect on hypoxic tumor cells. This is another action. Because of this mutagenesis, this molecule is not that routinely used in pregnant ladies. Then the mechanism of action of this molecule is the susceptible organisms carry electron transport components like ferredoxins, that is small iron sulfide proteins. So these susceptible organisms means Entamoeba histolytica carries these ferredoxin molecules that donate electrons to metronidazole, the antimicrobial that you are giving to the patient. So these ferredoxins, which donate electrons to the metronidazole, so that electron goes to the metronidazole and reduces the 5-nitro group of metronidazole by nitroreductase enzyme. So what is the net effect that we are going to get? Highly reactive nitro radical anions are formed, which interact with the microbial DNA with a lethal effect. So this microbial organism is going to give electron, which is going to completely kill the parasite. But this nitroreductase enzyme is absent in aerobes, so it is not going to affect them. So this metronidazole molecule is most specifically used in treating anaerobic infections, that we have to keep it in mind. So here the mechanism of action goes: metronidazole diffused into anaerobic bacterial or sensitive protozoal cells. In electron transport chain, the nitro group of metronidazole is reduced by ferredoxin by accepting electron from transport protein. Then reduced product appears to be responsible for killing the organism, probably reacting with cellular macromolecules such as DNA, protein, and membrane, inactivation of DNA, and death of protozoa and susceptible bacteria. It's very lethal. Okay. Then coming to the resistance. Resistance to the metronidazole has been reported only with 2 infections, that is Trichomonas vaginalis and Giardia lamblia, but not with Entamoeba histolytica infection. Then coming to the pharmacokinetics, it is absorbed from small intestine, so ineffective in asymptomatic cyst passes. If it is not getting absorbed in small intestine, then the molecule will directly enter into the lumen of the large intestine where it can produce its own action. So that's why it is not used in the management of asymptomatic cases and also in chronic intestinal amoebiasis as well. Then it diffuses into all tissues except placenta and achieves concentrations lethal to the sensitive organisms in CSF, bile, bone, abscesses, everything. It can approach everywhere. Then pharmacokinetics, main metabolism is in the liver into a relatively inactive acid metabolite and an active compound, that is hydroxy metabolite, which acts against anaerobic organisms. Then only 20% plasma protein binding, half-life is 8 hours. That's why we administer this molecule 8-hourly. Hepatic failure prolongs its plasma half-life, very common thing. Then excretion through urine, so producing reddish brown urine. So you need to remember what are the various drugs that produce change in the either change in the color of the skin or urine or other secretions. So these kind of questions will be asked in your Viva OC. Then it is secreted in milk. So here you can see the metabolism of metronidazole. This is the metronidazole acetic acid is formed from metronidazole. Then 2-hydroxymetronidazole, and then the glucuronate product, metronidazole glucuronate. So this is the inactive molecule and this is the active molecule. Okay. Then ADR, adverse drug reactions. Common ones are marked nausea, anorexia, abdominal pain. Don't write as usual in your routine way, nausea, vomiting, diarrhea. So apart from the nausea and abdominal pain, it does produce metallic taste in the mouth. You can just remember the mnemonic M for metrozil, M for metallic taste in the mouth. So that's why patients, after taking one tablet, they don't prefer to take the another tablet. So there is a problem of always the patient compliance in regards to the metronidazole. Then less common symptoms are vomiting, diarrhea, headaches, stomatitis, cystitis, dizziness, vertigo, ataxia, urticaria, pruritus, and flushing, a kind of allergic manifestations that we do come across. Then rare manifestations are muscular weakness, peripheral neuropathy. That's why it is contraindicated in case of cerebral disorders. Then seizures, incoordination, encephalopathy, and convulsions. So we need to carefully observe the patient whenever we are administering metronidazole molecule for a long period of time. Then other ADR are reversible neutropenia because of the nitro group that is present in its chemical structure. Then the most important part of the ADR is, apart from the metallic taste in the mouth and CNS manifestations, anti-abuse like reactions on alcohol consumption. It happens during first 3 days of metronidazole therapy. So what is it that we'll say it later on? It also produces tumorogenic and mutagenic effects, but they are seen only in experimental animals. There are no evidences that they may happen that in case of human beings also. But to have a safety factor, we don't generally prescribe metronidazole molecule in first trimester of pregnancy. We just try to avoid. But after that, in second and third trimester, we can prescribe this molecule. What is this disulfiram-like reaction or anti-abuse reaction that we have discussed in the earlier slide? It is seen in alcoholic patients. Suppose the patient is on alcohol, already taking alcohol, and if you prescribe metronidazole for some other indication, then the patient will bounce back to you with the complaints of nausea and vomiting because of acetaldehyde dehydrogenase enzyme because of alcohol metabolism. Then how the patient manifests. So there will be flushing of the skin, accelerated heart rate, shortness of breath, and throbbing headache, visual disturbance, and circulatory collapse. That patient cannot be able to tolerate metronidazole, and immediately he just switches off. So whenever a patient, an alcoholic patient comes to you with amoebiasis, you should prefer some other drugs in place of metronidazole. We do have, we'll come across in our subsequent discussion. Then preparations and dosage. Tablets 200 and 400 mg for oral use. Then vaginal tablets containing 500 mg. And rectal suppositories 1 and 1.5. Then pediatric suspension 200 mg per 5 ml. And there are solutions, metronidazole solutions available for intravenous administration also for severe infections. So you can see various dosages of metronidazole here: 200 mg, 400 mg, 500 mg, and above are also there that will be coming across while we are dealing with the treatment proper of various sorts of amoebiasis. So this is a common area that the examiners choose to ask you. If you answer everything very well, then they may ask you that what are the various doses of metronidazole and where they are used, indications of each and every dose and route of administration they may ask. Then we'll see here, mild intestinal amoebiasis, 400 mg TID for 5 to 7 days. Then invasive dysentery and liver abscess, 800 mg TID for 7 to 10 days. The dose has been doubled, along with luminal amebicide to eradicate the cispases, carrier state. Then hepatic amoebiasis, 1 gram. It is a little higher when compared to the 800 milligrams. Intravenous administration because it is little advanced stage, followed by 0.5 grams or 500 milligrams every 8 to 12 hours till oral therapy is started. Then failure of therapy, if any of these dosages the patient is not responding and recovering, then you have to think about that there is a possibility of abscess inside the body, and we have to identify what is the location of the abscess, and you need to aspirate that, or you may need to add chloroquine in case of amoebic liver abscess. Okay. Then other uses, Trichomonas vaginitis, again 400 mg TID for 7 days, topical application. Then giardiasis, 400 mg TID for 7 days, and surgical prophylaxis, again 400 mg 8 hours before surgery. So all 400 mg. Okay. Then other uses are H. pylori infection. So this topic is over for you already. So that is H. pylori infection. The dose of metronidazole that is used in H. pylori infection is 500 mg PD along with protein inhibitors and clarithromycin. And it is also used in advanced cases like hepatic encephalopathy. And the dose and route of administration is obviously IV. Dose depends on the need. Then other uses, chemoprophylaxis and treatment of anaerobic infections like infections of gut, soft tissues, skin ulcers, and lung and brain abscesses, septicemia, and pseudomembranous colitis. It's a powerful drug. And severe abdominal and pelvic abscess also, we can use metronidazole along with the combination of gentamicin or clindamycin, which does produce a synergistic kind of action. Then uses. What else uses that we have? Ulcerative gingivitis also it can be used, but preferred treatment is penicillin G. So here it is used in the dose of 200 mg TID. So what are the various doses that we have been coming across since few slides? 200 mg, 400 mg, 800 mg, and then grams level also. Various indications. Indications are differing, and even 500 mg in the management of H. pylori also. And here we can use in case of ulcerative gingivitis tetracycline and clindamycin also. Then other uses are dracunculosis, trench mouth, and acne rosacea. Then precautions, liver failure, renal failure, as we discussed regarding the pharmacokinetics, and then CNS diseases because they do produce CNS manifestations, then pregnancy, especially first trimester. We need to be very careful, but second and third trimester, we can administer under supervision. Then contraindications, first trimester of pregnancy, chronic alcoholism because it produces abuse, anti-abuse-like reaction or disulfiram-like reaction. Neurological diseases, because CNS manifestations, it does produce blood dyscrasias. We have seen that also. Then cancer because of its tumorigenic potential. And they may ask you one question. I'm giving the homework for all of you regarding the anti-abuse-like reaction with metronidazole and alcohol combination. They may ask in your viva voce that what are the other drugs that produce the same kind of anti-abuse-like reaction. This is homework for you. Then drug interactions. So we have discussed already that metronidazole, whenever it is administered to a patient who is on alcohol, it does produce disulfiram-like reaction. Then if you administer metronidazole with cimetidine, it may reduce the metabolism of the molecule. Then phenytoin and phenobarbital, because they are the enzyme inducers, they may enhance the excretion of metronidazole molecule, and other enzyme inducers because of their increasing potential in excreting the metronidazole molecule. Obviously, the therapeutic efficacy may be reduced. Then metronidazole, as such, it enhances warfarin action and it increases lithium toxicity also. Then tinidazole. It is a second generation nitroimidazole derivative, same properties like that of the metronidazole, analogous actions. Broad spectrum protozoal and antimicrobial activity. It does have long half-life of 12 hours. There it was 8 hours. So there we were administering 8 hourly. Here, because of 12 hours long half-life, we can administer this molecule just once in a day. That's enough. So patient compliance is good with this molecule. But it is more expensive when compared to metronidazole and better tolerated, not too many side effects. Then uses whenever there is intolerance to metronidazole, and then in case of amoebiasis, 2 grams is used OD once in a day for 3 days administration. In case of especially amoebic liver abscess. And in case of H. pylori infection, just like that of the metronidazole molecule, this can be given 500 mg BD for 2 weeks in case of triple therapy. And other indications are giardiasis, Trichomonas resinitis, where you prescribe 2 grams single dose. And ulcerative gingivitis, like that of the metronidazole, it is also useful in that condition. Then satronidazole, nitroimidazole with a long half-life of 14 hours. So half-life is getting increased by drug after drug. Better tolerability, no nausea, vomiting or metallic taste, absence of neurological manifestations and disulfiram-like reactions. So you can just proceed with this molecule even if the patient is on alcohol, even if the patient is suffering from some CNS disorders. So you may be asked in your viva voce. So if a patient who is a chronic alcoholic or who is having already some CNS disorders, if the patient comes to you with intestinal amoebiasis and extraintestinal amoebiasis, what are the drugs, better drugs that you try to prescribe to that patient? So this is how you have to study. Then dose to be given is 300 mg BD for 3 to 5 days for amoebiasis. Then secnidazole, analog of metronidazole, longer half-life and similar uses used in acute amoebic dysentery, giardiasis. So single dose here again, higher dose that is 2 grams, and hepatic amoebiasis only 1.5 grams per day for 5 days administration. Then ornidazole, enimidazole with similar properties as secnidazole, long half-life of 12 to 14 hours, same like that of the other groups. Available as 500 mg tablets, so we do prescribe 500 mg BD for 5 to 10 days. But single daily dose of 1.5 grams for 3 days is also equally effective. And the mechanism of action of this molecule is similar to that of the other thing that we have just now discussed. After passive absorption into bacterium cell, the nitro group of ornidazole is reduced to amine group by ferredoxin type redox system. Okay, the redox intermediate intracellular metabolite kills the protozoa, the same like that of the metronidazole. And indications are amoebiasis, giardiasis, trichomoniasis, anaerobic infections, and bacterial vaginosis. Okay, there is a different sort of treatment because of regarding this Trichomonas vaginalis and bacterial vaginalis. So that we may discuss when we go to the some other topic. This is not right now the right area. Then 8-hydroxyquinolines. So we have iodoquinol here. It is effective against luminal trophozoites and cysts as well, but not on trophozoites in the intestinal wall or extraintestinal tissues. That's why we call it as luminal amebicide, not acting on intestinal amebiasis or extraintestinal amebiasis. Mechanism of action is not clear yet. And 90% of the drug is retained in the intestine and is excreted in feces. 10% only enters into the circulation, undergoes glucuronidation like that of the other molecule, and gets excreted in urine. Same features. ADR, the patient comes back to you with the complaints of nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, like the way that you generally describe NBD for every drug, ADR. Anorexia, abdominal pain, headache, rash. Then dose-related neuropathy, optic neuritis, subacute myelooptic neuropathy. This is a little bit a severe ADR which we need to pay attention. And because of this intensified ADR, this molecule is banned in many of the countries because of its high toxicity. Then goiter on prolonged medication. Because iodoquinol, the drug itself contains iodine. So you are administering for a long period of time. So iodine excess intake is there, more than necessity. So iodism due to chronic iodine overload, it gives rise to the manifestations like furunculosis, inflammation of mucous membranes, then urticarial or allergic manifestations like dermatitis, urticaria, and pruritus, and fever can result in iodine toxicity. Then indications are intestinal amebiasis as an alternative to diloxanate furoate, but not routinely prescribed. It is most commonly used as luminal amebicide. And then giardiasis, local treatment of monilial and trichomonas vaginitis, bacterial and fungal skin infections, and other diarrheal diseases also. Then 650 mg TID is administered for 21 long days. Because of that, the molecule is going to produce so many severe ADR because of its high toxicity profile and also iodine toxicity and goiter because of long-term administration for 21 days. Contraindications, obviously, in patients with intolerance to iodine. Precautions are taken with meals to limit GI toxicity because along with food, few molecules, they get absorbed little low. Then optic neuropathy, renal disease, thyroid disease, iodine toxicity because of the iodine component in the molecule. Then non-amoebic hepatic disease also. Then comes the other molecule, that is chloroquine. It kills the trophozoites, absorbed orally and concentrated in the liver. So that's why it is used mainly in treating hepatic amoebic liver abscess most commonly and extraintestinal amebiasis. Complete absorption from upper intestine, minimal effect in intestinal amebiasis because of poor concentration in the colonic lumen and bone because it is getting absorbed at the higher level itself. Not effective in the treatment of cystitis and extrahepatic amebiasis. Extrahepatic means specifically it is used in the management of only, it is mainly useful in the management of amoebic liver abscess, not the other extrahepatic amebiasis. Okay. Mechanism of action is by accumulating in the acidic vessel of amoeba. It raises the vesicular pH, interferes with degradation of hemoglobin by parasitic lysosomes. So you can see the altered lab findings here. Then ADR nausea, vomiting, anorexia, epigastric pain, pruritus, hypotension, mental disturbances. We need to pay attention to this. Then very important side effects with this molecule which create inconvenience to the patient are loss of vision due to retinal damage, then loss of hearing, and then hemolysis in G6PD deficient patient, which is a very dreadful thing, then agranulocytosis and alopecia. What are the indications? Whenever you come across intolerance to metronidazole therapy and failure with metronidazole therapy, then the second alternative is chloroquine molecule. Then its use in hepatic amoebiasis has declined following the availability of metronidazole. So metronidazole is the first drug of choice. If the patient is either intolerant or not responding with metronidazole, then we have to switch over to chloroquine because chloroquine also have dreaded side effects. Liver abscess used along with metronidazole and diloxanide furoate, which is a luminal amebicide. Then other indications are malaria. You have gone through that. Then rheumatoid arthritis, lepra reaction that you are well aware of. Then photogenic reactions. Dose for liver abscess to be given is 600 mg for 2 days followed by 300 mg daily for 2 to 3 weeks. Then coming to the molecule, emetin. It is an alkaloid obtained from ipecac, the root of the plant Cephalus ipecacuanha. This molecule is also having very high toxicity because of which it is now replaced by the prior drug, that is metronidazole. Mechanism of action is in vitro. Emetin has a direct lethal effect on the trophozoites of Entamoeba histolytica in concentrations that can be achieved in the blood. Optimum concentrations are having direct lethal effect. And the main mechanism of action is by inhibiting the proton synthesis in case of trophozoites, which arrest their multiplication and for further phagocytosis. Little effect on cis forms. So mainly trophozoites are affected by using emetin molecule. That much you need to remember. And it is a direct lethal effect. It is a bitter taste. It is having bitter taste because it is an alkaloid and it is absorbed from the gut. But because of its irritant and bitter taste, it is probably most commonly prescribed through deep IM injection. It is concentrated in the liver, but persists for a month after single dose. Then let us see. For a month, the drug is staying in the body means we need to be careful of what are the ADR that the drug is going to produce. Significant amounts are also present in the lung, kidney, and spleen. And it is eliminated in urine. Repeated injections because of renal involvement, it may give rise to accumulation. What are the ADR that it is going to produce? Because it is going to stay in the body for 1 month. Local reactions because of deep IM and even subcutaneous administration also. That is like local pain, tenderness, stiffness, and even weakness of the muscles, and rarely an abscess at the site of the injection. And GI system, nausea, vomiting, diarrhea. So you don't need to strain to remember these side effects. Then headache, dizziness, and prostration. Then another important side effect. So nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, we have already covered, and you people already write it for each and every drug in your final exam. But this molecule is specifically having the vomiting propensity. It occurs because of both the result of gastric irritation and stimulation of the CTZ as well. Because of the increased propensity of vomiting, this molecule is specifically named as emetin, emetic potential, so named as emetin. Then cardiovascular system. What are the dreadful side effects that it is going to produce? Tachycardia, precordial pain, hypotension, myocarditis, pericarditis, so many. So we can discover this just by taking ECG just before the treatment. Whenever we are going to start the emetin treatment for any patient, then after the treatment started, we have to observe through by taking repeated ECGs because it is an early index of, it gives an early index of cardiotoxicity. So ECG is a must. So in these patients, because all sorts of cardiovascular manifestations are there, you have to advise the patient to take complete bed rest. Another miscellaneous ADR. Weakness, aching, tenderness of the muscles, especially those of the neck and limbs, because of the neuromuscular blockade propensity for this molecule. Then contraindications, cardiac or renal damage, renal excretion, and cardiac ADR is too much. Then pregnancy, that also we have discussed, and old people and young children. Because of this high toxicity, we are going to contraindicate this molecule in case of pregnancy, old people, and young children. Generally, this molecule is not preferred because of its very high toxic profile. Then preparations and dosage. Emetic hydrochloride injection, subcutaneous or deep IM. Then syrup of ipecac, preferred agent for inducing vomiting, in case that is 30 ml in adults is to be given. Uses as a tissue amebicide. Then for the treatment of liver fluke and lung fluke, and then ipecacuanha syrup as an emetic agent. Then another molecule connected to this, that is dihydroemetic. Emetic is a natural alkaloid that is obtained from the plants, whereas this dihydroemetic is a semi-synthetic drug. That is the difference, main difference. But this molecule is less toxic when compared to the emetic, so prefer to emetic whenever we need tissue amebicide. So we have like injectable preparations, 1 mg per kg IM daily for 5 to 7 days. Then oral administration 50 mg daily for 10 days. Then tetracycline, antibiotics that are used in the management of amoebiasis. This is very, very important 2 marks question. It is a broad spectrum antibiotic that you have already studied. Then main mechanism of action is by protein synthesis inhibition. It is incompletely absorbed in the small intestine, reaches the colon in large amounts, and inhibits the bacterial flora with which amoebae live symbiotically. So ultimately, it acts like a kind of luminal amebicide. So it interferes with the symbiotic gut flora on which the parasite depends upon for its nourishment. Okay. And apart from that, direct lethal effect at high concentrations also we can come across. So here, this is a very important action that the tetracyclines have. Intestinal bacteria are essential for the production of intestinal amoebic lesions. They probably act by creating an environment congenial to the growth of amoeba. So they are interfering with that by manufacturing certain metabolites and vitamins on which the protozoa thrive and by producing secondary infection. So this step, the relationship between the entamoeba histolytica and the gut flora, common gut flora, which are non-pathogenic, so that is going to get disturbed by the administration of tetracyclines. The tetracyclines, though exhibiting an anti-amoebic action in vitro in large doses, probably acts in vivo inside the body, altering the intestinal bacterial flora. Okay, so that becomes an unfavorable condition for the pathogenic bacteria, not bacteria, microorganisms. Then dose to be given is 0.25 grams or 250 milligrams 6 hourly for 10 to 15 days in combination with metronidazole to treat amoebic liver abscess. So not only tissue amebicides can be given, so tetracyclines like antibiotics also can be administered to prevent the subsequent secondary infections. Okay, then used in resistant varieties and chronic cases also. When given along with systemic amebicides, they lessen the risk of opportunistic infections, and there is no possibility of perforation, there is no possibility of peritonitis. So that's why in case of systemic or invasive amoebiasis, we do prescribe along with the tissue amebicide, we do prescribe the amoebicidal antibiotics. Okay, this is the role of antibiotics. Then comes paromomycin. It is an amaloglycoside antibiotic which acts by inhibiting protein synthesis and thus kills trophozoites. It also inhibits symbiosis flora and thus inhibiting trophozoite. So both of the molecules have the same effect. Then not absorbed orally, excreted through urine by glomerular filtration, nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, abdominal pain, several common ADR are having. Then steatorrhea, rash and headache, etc. And indications are, it is an effective luminal amebicide with cure rate of about 80%. It is used parenterally for visceral leishmaniasis. And then giardiasis, alternative agent for metronidazole in pregnancy. Because metronidazole first trimester of pregnancy we are not able to use because of its mutagenic potential. So then we can choose this molecule paromomycin. Then for vaginal trichomoniasis, 6 to 6.25% cream can be used. And then it is also used in the management of cutaneous leishmaniasis and cryptosporidiosis. Then it is available in the form of capsules, IM injections, and topical creams. 500 mg TID for 10 days. Precautions are GI ulceration and renal disease. Then comes another molecule, diloxanate furoate. It is highly effective luminal amoebicidal drug because it directly kills trophozoites, which are responsible for the formation of cysts, which can carry the transmit the disease from one patient to another patient. Mechanism of action is similar to that of chloramphenica, and they may act by inhibiting synthesis of the proteins. This molecule, diloxanate furoate, it gets split into two compounds in the gut, that is diloxanate and furoate. It is given orally. 90% is hydrolyzed to diloxanate and absorbed, metabolized by glucuronidation and excreted in urine like that of the other molecules. And 10% non-absorbable portion is active, and it does produce action of amoeba. That is, acts as a luminal amoebicide. So it does not have much of a high toxic profile, so safe and non-toxic. So maybe flatulence, nausea, itching, urticaria, kind of mild ADR it produces. Then indications are cispasis, because it is a luminal amoebicide, or asymptomatic amoebiasis most commonly. It is used, and it is also used in the management of mild intestinal amoebiasis, but not in extraintestinal amoebiasis because it is a luminal amoebicide. It is not a tissue amoebicide. Okay. Then dose 500 mg tablets 3 times daily for 5 to 10 days. Non-cumulative, so second course also can be given if we are doubtful of the response from the patient. But it is used with tissue amoebicide like metronidazole to treat intestinal and extraintestinal amoebiasis. So it is not only used in the management of asymptomatic cases because it has got the action of luminal amoebicide activity. Because even in case of intestinal and extraintestinal amoebiasis, there is a possibility of cysts persisting in the lumen. So we need to completely kill those cysts. So because of that reason, we need to use, along with the tissue amoebicides, we need to use luminal amoebicides also to eradicate the disease completely from the patient. Understood? Then it is oxanide. There is an oral synthetic broad spectrum anti-protozoal agent, which also acts as a luminal amoebicide. And it's a prodrug which gets converted into the active form in the body, that is tisonoxide. And the main mechanism of action is that's what we have discussed in the case of metronidazole, the same kind, inhibits pyruvate ferredoxin oxidoreductase enzyme, that is PFOR, dependent electron transfer reaction, and then cell damage. It is metabolized through conjugation, excreted through urine and bile. And nitazoxanide, it produces greenish tint to the urine, which is something specific. So if you recap, what are the other drugs that produce some discoloration in the urine among all the anti-amoebic drugs? So you can just try to think about it if you can recap. Then other side effects are abdominal pain, vomiting, and headache. 500 mg BD for 3 days is to be given. Then aranofin, drug with gold content, 10 times more potent than the current treatment, and effective against amoeba in lab and animal studies, but human therapy it is doubtful, so it has got only orphan drug status. The itofamide used in chronic intestinal amoebiasis, here again mechanism of action is unknown. 1 gram per day for 3 days is to be given. Then drug resistance, we have covered all the drugs, all the anti-amoebic drugs. Now we'll go into the drug resistance and then the management proper. So drug resistance with these molecules is mainly because of either decreased drug uptake or increased drug efflux. Drug efflux is enhanced by the cellular components, that is the P-glycoproteins, which are situated on the cell membrane. So in case of drug resistance of any of these molecules, we can easily find the increased expression of 4 P-glycoprotein genes, that is EHPGP1, 2, 5, 6. What about 3 and 4? They are like pseudogenes, which carry the drug resistance in a pseudo manner. Okay. Then novel targets. What are the novel targets that we do have? That is entamoeba histolytica alcohol dehydrogenase 2 and mononuclear metal thiosemicarbazole, carnamide derivative ethyl 4-chlorophenyl carbamate, and Haldina cardifolia. So these are the novel targets. Then coming to the chemotherapy of amoebiasis proper means, it is like how do you exactly manage various types of amoebiasis, having known various anti-amoebic drugs, various types of amoebiasis, and the classification of all the drugs. So, in a nutshell, treatment of amoebiasis, this is asymptomatic case. Luminal amebicides, gloxonide furoate is used. Alternative drugs, other luminal amebicides like adoquinol and paromomycin. Then mild to moderate intestinal infection, metronidazole, which is a tissue amebicide, and this is luminal amebicide, gloxonide furoate. Alternative can be in place of metronidazole, because if we are not in a position to prescribe it, is even in case of pregnant ladies, or there is metronidazole intolerance is there, or metronidazole failure, therapy failure is there, then you can go ahead with tinidazole. But pregnant ladies, of course, tetracyclines, we generally don't go for it. And then other cases, failure cases, we can go ahead with retronidazole, reticycline, erythromycin, and gloxonide furoate. Then in case of severe intestinal infection, metronidazole or tinidazole, tissue amebicides, along with luminal amebicide, that is gloxonide furoate. Alternative drugs can be tetracycline or emetin or dihydroemetin, but these are rarely preferred because of their high toxic profile. These are almost banned in many of the countries. Then along with gloxonide furoate molecule. In hepatic abscess and other extraintestinal diseases, metronidazole or tinidazole are along with a combination of gloxonide furoate like the double severe intestinal infection. And here also emetin or dihydroemetin along with chloroquine, because hepatic amoebiasis, chloroquine is the preferred molecule in this case. And then gloxonide furoate. Okay. So here you can see asymptomatic intestinal infection along with the dose. There is some slight discrepancy in this slide. I'll just tell you why it is so. Asymptomatic intestinal infection, luminal agent gloxonide furoate 500 mg TID for 10 days, or adoquinol 650 mg TID for 21 days, or paromomycin, another luminal amebicide 10 mg per kg TID. Then mild to moderate intestinal infection, here we have to use metronidazole. This is asymptomatic. There is no need of tissue amebicide, which is a metronidazole or tinidazole. So a mild to moderate intestinal infection means tissue is getting involved. So tissue amebicide we need to use. That we have discussed tissue amebicide and luminal amebicide we have discussed in the classification. You can just go back to that slide. 750 mg TID or 500 mg IV every 6 hours for 10 days. So some books say that even in mild case, 750 mg is to be given. But some books say mild case 400 mg is enough. Okay. Then tinidazole 2 grams daily for 3 days and luminal agent like this, luminal, either of these. Why we are adding luminal agent in case of intestinal amoebiasis? To completely eradicating the cyst, so that there will not be transmission of infection from that patient to another person. Then alternate agents, luminal agent plus tetracyclines 250 mg TID for 10 days or erythromycin 500 mg 4 times daily for 10 days. Then severe intestinal infection, metronidazole 750 mg. Here some books say that it is like 600 to 800 mg is okay for severe infections, PID, or 500 mg intravenous administration 6 hourly for 10 days, or tinidazole 2 grams daily for 3 days plus luminal agent to eradicate the infection completely. And this is alternate regimens are luminal agent or tetracycline or dihydroemetin or emetin 1 gram per kg subcutaneous IM for 3 to 5 days. Then hepatic abscess and amoeboma and other extraintestinal disease. Metronidazole, here you can go for 800 mg or 750 mg 3 times daily, or 500 mg IV plus tinidazole or tinidazole 2 gram daily for 5 days and luminal agent. So here in this slides, he has given starting from whether it is mild or severe or hepatic or extraintestinal amoebiasis, same 750 mg. Some textbooks say like that because to take care of proper precautions, they are going for directly higher dose. But some standard textbooks say that there is like a 400 mg, 600 mg, 800 mg for mild, severe, and hepatic and extraintestinal infections. Hope you got it. Then alternate regimen is dihydroemetin or emetin 1 milligrams per kg subcutaneous or IM for 8 to 10 days. And hepatic abscess, you need to go for chloroquine as we discussed in earlier slide, 500 mg BD for 2 days, then 500 mg daily for 21 days, along with luminal agent to completely eradicate the infection. And what is the role of antibiotics? So tetracyclines, broad spectrum antibiotics, whatever the antibiotics that till now we have discussed, they are used to treat bacterial superinfections in case of fulminant amoebic colitis. And they can, we discussed in the earlier slide also, they can prevent the rupture or perforation and infectivity to other tissues also. Then apart from the drug administration, what is the other mode of treatment that we can have? Percutaneous radiography guided aspiration of abscess, especially in case of left lobe liver abscess. Bacterial superinfection, pyogenic abscess, pleuropulmonary amoebiasis, empyema, and amoebic pericarditis. All these cases, we can aspirate the pus, Ancovisas kind of pus from the patient. That is percutaneous radiography guided aspiration. Okay, but there is a complication with that, which we have discussed in our introduction. That is, there is a complication if it is not done under aseptic precautions. There is a possibility of risk of developing cutaneous amoebiasis. So here he is drawing the pus. Here it is coming, Ancovisas appearance. Then prevention. So our job is not done with chemotherapy, then we have to think about the prevention also. We need to educate the patient regarding that, being doctors. So primary prevention means the measures aim to prevent the contamination of water, food, vegetables, and fruits with human feces. So first step to be taken care of is sanitation, safe disposal of human excreta, especially in case of rural areas. We need to educate the patients in that way. And then washing hands after defecation and before eating. Not only rural areas and even urban areas, also we need to educate especially children in this regard. And water supply, chlorination. Then, but chlorination is not adequate. We have discussed that hyperchlorination has to be done, but somehow we need to at least start with. Water filtration with sand filters. So because these two are not that completely preventive methods, we can better go for water filtration through boiling technique. This is the most effective than even the chemical treatment with chlorine. Boiling the water and then cooling the water and then taking it. Then food hygiene. Uncooked vegetables and foods can be disinfected with 5 to 10% of aqueous solution of acetic acid or full strength vinegar. This is one thing. Then thorough washing with detergents and running water will remove the cysts from foods and vegetables, but it has its own chemical effects because detergent means chemical only. We need to be a little careful. Avoid milk, cheese, and other dairy products that may have not been pasteurized. Then, since food handlers are major transmitters of amoebiasis, because the people who sell the vegetables and fruits, all these things, they should be periodically examined, treated, and educated in food hygiene practices such as hand washing. Otherwise, we all will be at risk. Then fly control, which act like vectors in the transmission of the disease. Then health education of the public for long-term results. Then coming to the secondary prevention, early diagnosis and treatment of both cases and carriers as well. Then no chemoprophylaxis as of now, where we're discussing in the subsequent slide. Then mass examination and treatment can't control the disease. There are some drawbacks in this. Then coming to the vaccine, immunoprophylaxis. Vaccines are being developed and tested. What are these vaccines? Anti-amoebic vaccines. Vaccine is a modified version of the proteins expressed on the surface of Entamoeba histolytica. So, a study in rodents has been found that the vaccine prevented the formation of liver abscess in case of rodents. But their efficacy in case of humans, it needs to be done. Still, research needs to be done. Okay, whether there is safety factor and toxicity, whether it is toxic or not, everything needs to be studied. Research needs to be done. So many components of the amoeba are immunogenic and may serve as targets for a future vaccine. What are they? They are N-acetyl D-galactosamine lectin, otherwise in simpler terminology can be called as gal-lectin. Okay. Then serine-rich Entamoeba histolytica protein, 29K DA protein, DNA vaccines, heparin sulfate binding protein. These are the most commonly used targets. Targets means which are having high immunogenic potential, which are under research. Then comes cysteine proteinases and lipophosphogycans, amebopores and galactose. So I have finished now till now the chemotherapy of amebiasis. So having known the amebiasis disease in detail, starting from the introduction and history, having known all the anti-amebic drugs, various classifications, and how the symptoms manifestations are there in each and every type of amebiasis, and what are the various classes of drugs that are used in the management of amebiasis, now it is your time to answer these questions. If you find in any difficulty in answering these questions, you can approach me at any time on WhatsApp or anything, or after you join the college. So here the questions are, after the acute infection, which medication is given to treat the asymptomatic colonization state of Entamoeba histolytica? Sounds simple, right? Then which statement regarding paromomycin is correct? Okay. Paromomycin is only effective against the luminal forms, principal ADR or optic neuritis and peripheral neuropathy. It is considered a nitroimidazole. If taken with alcohol, it has Elfram-like reaction may occur. These are the two multiple choice questions. Then comes the case studies, which are little only tough. If you have understood the concepts that I have presented in the first session, then it is very easy to answer these case studies. So whenever a question is given in the form of case study, I advise you to write down or mark the positive points which are relevant to take up into further discussion, to underline with a pencil. Then you will have a little bit more clarity. So what type of amebiasis is there and what type of drug that I have to put the patient on. Okay, here we'll see this here. A 41-year-old Egyptian immigrant presented to the examining doctor with a 10-day history of abdominal pain, multiple loose watery stools with occasional streaks of blood. On physical examination, he is a thin man with abdominal distress. His vital signs include temperature 38 degrees centigrade, pulse 88 beats per minute, and BP 120/80. So these are normal findings. We don't need to bother about. Whatever is there abnormal or the complaints or manifestations that patient has come to you that you need to pay attention to. Then he has no skin lesions, jaundice, or lymphadenopathy. Normal. The examination is remarkable for slight abdominal distension and right lower quadrant tenderness. This is specific point. Rectal examination reveals tenderness and brown liquid stool positive for occult bud. Point to be noted. Proctosigmoidoscopy demonstrates colonic mucosa that is diffusely edematous and friable. Okay. Then a biopsy specimen could not be obtained because he was uncooperative and combative. So leave it. Initial laboratory findings are as follows: hemoglobin 13.4, 40% leukocyte count, and everything is normal in this picture. Clinical picture is almost nothing that particular. 5% lymphocytes. This is okay. Then a liver scan and liver function tests are normal. On ultrasound examination, a tender mass palpable in the lower right quadrant reveals a 3 cm abdominal abscess. Then, during an exploratory operation, the clinician drains 100 ml of brownish yellow material. Smears of the drained material are positive for Entamoeba histolytica trophozoites, and culture of the material is negative for bacteria. Then, fresh stool tested for Entamoeba histolytica by tech labs. E. histolytica type 2 antigen detection test is positive. So the questions are, there are only 2 case studies that I have given. It is lengthy, but it is very easy if you pay attention to it. How was amoebic colitis differentiated from ulcerative colitis in this patient? What is the significance of obtaining serology in this patient? Why do we need to do this? And what are the major drugs that can be used to treat this patient? What regimen might be preferred in this case? Then case study 2. A 47-year-old man whose stool was found to be positive for Entamoeba histolytica cyst and routine examination was completely asymptomatic. Would you treat this patient? What are the other drug regimens for amebiasis? If this patient is not treated, what complications might be encountered? Because he is an asymptomatic person. Then case study 3. 24-year-old woman presented with a 5-day history of watery stools, bloody mucus, and fever after returning from Thailand. She initially was treated with ampicillin, to which she did not respond. She is 22 weeks pregnant lady. Remember, you have to underline this point. And her medical history includes rheumatic fever at the age 5 and heart murmurs. Temperature is 38.2, abdomen is soft, non-tender, complaints of severe cramps. Fresh stool is positive for occult blood, and wet mouth demonstrates trophozoites with ingested RBC, trophozoites, point to be noted. A trichrome stain stores Entamoeba histolytica trophozoites. Bacterial culture is negative for pathogenic bacteria, so bacillary thing is exploded. An abdominal CT scan is negative for abdominal or liver amoebiasis, and an anti-amoebic antibody test is negative. A diagnosis of finally intestinal amoebiasis is made. So, how do you treat this patient? Treatment for intestinal amoebiasis. If the patient subsequently develops amoebic colitis, how do you treat her, and what are some toxicities of concern with the selected regimens? Okay, there ends the topic. So I wish everyone go through the questionnaire and try to answer the questions. And if you don't get the answers, or if there is any confusion, anytime you can come back to me. Okay, hope you are all enjoying the integrated teaching pattern, and I got the good feedback from the students that they are getting benefited because they are able to study the disease in detail and then going to the pharmacology. It is becoming helpful for them. Okay, thank you one and all once again. Okay.